Is how does Genesis fit into the larger story of the Bible? As you see it from beginning to end, what role does Genesis play in the big picture of God's story?
Well, I just gave you a hint because that's that whole idea. Genesis is initiating the idea of God's presence through relationship. That's what the covenant is. That's what the covenant leads to. I call it Emmanuel theology, God with us. We know this, okay? But we keep thinking about Emmanuel as if it's just a Christmas story. It's not. This is God's plan and purpose for the entire world, for the entire history. This is what the Bible's all about. This is what God has always wanted, to be with us in relationship. That's what the Bible tells us. And Genesis launches all of that and gets us on that path. But we often miss it because we didn't know that Genesis 1 had to do with God's presence. We didn't know the covenant had to do with God's presence. We didn't recognize all of these things. We were too busy theologizing and playing Augustine. Augustine was great. I'm not criticizing him, but he was taking a particular theological perspective. And so we have to try to understand Genesis' role as inaugurating this idea, God's purpose of wanting to dwell among us and be in relationship with us. And that is the story of the Bible. Again, that flows through tabernacle and temple. It flows through Jesus. Remember, start in John 1. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Tabernacle language there. And then in the upper room, Jesus said, I'm going to go away. And they're crushed. No, you can't do this. This feels like, the Garden of Eden all over again. God's presence gone. He says, but don't worry, I'm going to send the Comforter. I'm not leaving you alone. And furthermore, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and note the language, so that where I am, you may also be. Presence, relationship. Then you move to Pentecost, and Babel is reversed. Everybody hears in their own language, and they scatter, but they scatter with the presence of God, the Holy Spirit indwelling them. And so the church becomes the place of God's presence. This is the rich theology from Old Testament, starting in Genesis, all the way through to New Testament and new creation. Because what are the first words of new creation? I will be their God, and they will be my people. I will walk among them. God's presence in relationship.